I was reborn to the day I confessed to my childhood friend. Amid the teasing and jeers from the crowd, he looked at me, my tear-streaked, red eyes, and coldly asked, "Lila, do you think it's fun to make a scene?" Then he turned to Emily, standing beside him, his tone softening. "Wait for me a moment. I'll deal with this and come find you." Impatiently, he scolded me. "Why are you always crying? If you have time, focus on your studies instead of thinking about love and relationships all day." Annoyed, I shoved him aside and stumbled backward, straight into the school delinquent, Ryan, who had been watching the commotion with a smirk. "Honey," clung to Ryan, sobbing uncontrollably. When I was 18, Ryan was still alive. Everything could still be fixed. Before Ryan died, he made me promise to live to 100 before coming to find him. I agreed but broke my promise. Just 3 days later, I rushed after him. As my eyes closed for the last time, I gave myself one excuse. If I saw him, I'd say I dreamed he was flirting with other ghost girls down there. But in truth, I hadn't dreamed at all. I couldn't sleep without him. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back at 18. I was holding flowers, surrounded by the cheers and chants of the crowd. "Confess! Confess!" The sea of people surged around me, but my gaze immediately found him, a head of glaring blonde hair in the corner, standing unnoticed. His eyes seemed to sweep over me, casual yet deliberate. As I stared at him, tears began to flow uncontrollably. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could, Ethan's voice cut in. "Lila, do you think it's fun to make a scene?" Dazed, I realized the boy in front of me was frowning slightly, his expression cold and indifferent. The lively atmosphere faltered for a moment until Sophie broke the awkwardness. "Ethan, you need to confirm your acceptance speech." Ethan turned to Sophie, his expression softening. "Wait a moment. I'll deal with this and come find you." The gentleness in his tone was rare. Sophie, like Ethan, was a top student. People often joked that the two of them were a perfect match, academic geniuses destined for each other. But Sophie scoffed at the idea. "I'm not some girl who only thinks about love all day," she once retorted. Ethan admired her for that. He even said to me once, "I don't like girls who only have love on their minds." But back then, I was obsessed with him. I naively thought confessing on my birthday wouldn't embarrass me. Later, I realized he despised emotional manipulation, just as he did now. He impatiently took the flowers from my hands. "If you have time, focus on your studies instead of obsessing over love all day." The crowd murmured. "Look, Lila's crying again. She's been chasing Ethan for years, and now she's become a joke. How embarrassing." In my past life, I had indeed cried out of humiliation, but this time, my eyes were only on that blonde-haired boy in the corner. I stared at him, tears flowing, my lips trembling too much to speak. Seeing me like this, Ethan frowned and sighed. "Lila, why are you always crying? So annoying. Move. You're blocking my view." Without hesitation, I shoved Ethan aside and ran straight to the boy I thought I had lost forever. Honey, you're alive. I'm so glad," I cried, clutching his warm chest, breathing in the familiar scent of sunshine. Ryan's body stiffened. "What the? Are you crazy? Who are you calling honey?" His face turned red to his ears. "Lila, who do you think you're calling honey?" Ethan's furious voice sounded from behind me. In my past life, I had often pretended to be close to other boys to make Ethan jealous. He'd get mad but would always placate me casually afterward. But this time, the boy I held was the one Ethan despised most. A troublemaker. I cried harder, clutching Ryan's shirt. "Honey, you're really alive. I can't believe it." My hand slipped under his clothes, desperately checking his chest for the fatal wound he had in our past life. "Whoa, what the hell?" Ryan exclaimed, utterly freaked out. I sobbed. "What are you doing? Take off your shirt and let me check." His face instantly flushed bright red. "I'm a decent guy." "Okay." I cried even harder. "Please, honey, let me see. I'm begging you." He didn't know what to do with his hands, fidgeting nervously. Finally, he leaned closer and whispered, "Fine, but only after everyone's gone." "Okay." Watching this, Ethan's voice rang out, full of disdain. "Lila, Don't you feel ashamed making such a scene in front of everyone? I'm not going to humor you this time. He turned and walked away. The crowd quickly dispersed, muttering as they left. Ryan looked down at me, his tone half mocking. The show's over. Are you still not letting go? I shook my head, clinging to his neck tightly and sobbing uncontrollably. I'll never let go for the rest of my life. At 18, I hadn't yet broken my leg. I hadn't fallen into depression. At 18, Ryan hadn't yet taken a knife for me. Everything could still be saved. Ryan looked at me in disbelief and threatened. If you don't let go, I'm leaving. I sniffled, nodding. Okay. He sighed, scooping me up and walking out of the classroom. As soon as we stepped outside, the principal's voice boomed from the hallway. Ryan, why aren't you training? And what are you doing carrying a girl like that? Acting indecent in public. I refused to budge, clinging tightly to him. Embarrassed, Ryan blushed furiously and stammered. Report. Sir, her leg is broken, so I'm taking her to the nurse's office. The principal's tone softened slightly. You've got a kind heart, kid. Good for you. In my past life, Ryan had carried me to every hospital, accompanying me to countless rehabilitation sessions. Now, as people moved away, Ryan stared at me, exasperated. Lila, seriously, what's your deal? Still holding on to his neck. I pouted. Honey. His expression twitched, and his ears turned red. Stop calling me that, he hissed. But you're my honey. I replied stubbornly. You're my favorite honey. His face looked like it was about to explode. Lila, he said through gritted teeth. Do you remember who threw my love letter into the trash yesterday? I froze, caught off guard. Ryan had confessed to me once before. Back then, I had stomped on his letter in anger and sneered. I hate guys like you. Dumb jocks with no brains. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wasn't exactly a genius either. Just a flexible dance student. But my disdain for Ryan back then wasn't genuine. It was born from Ethan's hatred for me. Because Ethan hated fools. I took it out on Ryan, who was the type Ethan despised most. I blinked and put on my most sincere expression. About that, yesterday was actually a test. I was testing your devotion. Promise, honey, from now on, I'll only love you. Ryan's lips twitched, and he muttered, Can you stop calling me honey? I shook my head. Nope. He sighed in defeat. Fine. Whatever. Call me whatever you want. Holding me like a koala. He sighed again. But Lila, you're a person, not a monkey. Can you get off me now? I clung even tighter. But I want to hold you a little longer. Honey. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. Even his ears turned scarlet. At 18, Ryan was so adorably fierce. Like a harmless puppy trying to act tough. Ryan carried me to his uncle's house. His great-uncle was a bit of an eccentric, always mumbling superstitious things and doing fortune-telling at the end of the alley. The old man glanced at me and immediately frowned. Her eyes are bloodshot. She's clearly being followed by something. He pulled out some yellow paper and quickly drew a talisman, sticking it to me. This will ward off evil spirits, he declared solemnly. Ryan set me down outside the house and said, Wait here. Don't follow me. I'll be right back. Of course, I didn't listen. I snuck up to the door and overheard him speaking softly. Uncle, is there a way to keep her safe? Forever. Hearing that, my heart soared with joy. See, he's already crazy about me. In this life, Ryan, it's my turn to run toward you. I stayed with the Shen family. Our families have been close for generations. And they arranged our engagement when we were just kids, 10 years old. When my parents passed away unexpectedly, Ethan tightly held my hand and said, Lila, you still have me. I'll always be here for you. I moved into the Shen family's home. His parents were kind to me, and Ethan's mom treated me like her own child. She even hired the best dance instructors for me, and my wardrobe was filled with beautiful clothes she bought. But no matter how good they were to me, I wasn't their real daughter. They initially saw me as their future daughter-in-law. That changed after my leg injury left me unable to walk normally. One day, Ethan's mom sat me down and said, Lila, we've always cared for you like our own daughter. And Ethan sees you as a little sister. Don't worry. We'll find you a good husband someday. At dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Shun served me food and asked about my schoolwork. Their kindness felt hollow, especially after remembering what they said in my previous life. It was almost laughable. I put down my chopsticks and said, "Uncle, Auntie, I'd like to stay in the school dorms. It would help me focus on my studies. And as you know, my grades aren't great." They looked surprised. "The dorms? The conditions there are so poor. How would you live there? Don't stress yourself too much. Lila, Ethan can tutor you. His grades are excellent." I shook my head calmly. "No thank you. He's busy with competitions. And I don't want to bother him." Mrs. Shun seemed to sense something and asked, "Did you two have a fight?" Ethan stayed silent, and I smiled faintly. "No, we didn't. He's been very good to me. I've always thought of him as my big brother. And I'm sure he'll find someone just as exceptional to be his wife someday." Ethan's gaze flicked toward me, lingering for a moment before I excused myself and went to my room. Lying in bed, I felt the same familiar insomnia from my previous life creeping in. Back then, my depression was severe, and I relied on sleeping pills to get through the nights. It wasn't until I met Ryan that I began to heal. Little by little, sleeplessness always brought anxiety and restlessness. So I got up and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. To my surprise, Ethan was there. He placed a bowl of chicken wonton soup, my favorite, in front of me and said, "Eat something. I noticed you barely ate anything at dinner." Seeing that I didn't respond, he crouched down in front of me and sighed. "Are you still upset about earlier? I was just frustrated because you're in your senior year, and you're not focusing on your studies." When I remained silent, he reached out and gently ruffled my hair. "All right, don't be mad anymore. Okay." He let out a soft laugh, half helpless and half amused. "You silly girl." This was how Ethan always was. He would say something kind and gentle after I'd been hurt, and like a fool, I'd always forgive him. I would convince myself he liked me because he could be tender and do small, thoughtful things for me. When I didn't respond, he stroked my hair again, his tone teasing. "Do you think our future kids will be as silly as you? In my previous life." He'd said the same thing. At the time, I was touched, thinking he'd envisioned a future with me. What I didn't know was that he said it after he and Sophie won an award. And a teacher joked, "If these two ever have kids, they'll be so smart." Ethan wasn't thinking about marrying or having kids with me. He was worried that being with me might lower his future children's IQ. I forced a smile and looked at him. "Don't worry. We'll never have kids." Ethan exhaled sharply and frowned. "Lila, I'm busy too. I don't have time to deal with your unreasonable tantrums." I smiled calmly. "It won't happen again." He didn't try to comfort me this time and simply turned back to his room. The next morning, with dark circles under my eyes, I left the house and went straight to Ryan's place, banging on his door. Ryan lived alone near the school after his parents divorced. When he opened the door, I threw myself into his arms without hesitation. "Honey, I want to sleep with you," I declared. "Lila, what the hell?" Ryan looked completely flustered. His hands raised awkwardly as if he didn't know where to put them. "Lila, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm not offering that kind of service," Ryan barked, clearly on edge. I clung to him tightly, my voice trembling with exhaustion and tears. "Honey, I really just want to sleep." He was losing it, muttering curses under his breath. "Fine. Sleep. Sleep." He stormed into his bedroom, and I followed successfully. As soon as I lay on his bed, he grabbed a pillow and made a beeline for the couch. I quickly grabbed his hand. "Where are you going?" "To sleep on the couch." "We can't share the bed," he said bluntly. I held on to him pitifully. "I can't sleep if you're not next to me." In our previous life, having Ryan by my side was the only way I ever felt comfortable and at ease enough to rest. I refused to let go, tugging at him while tears welled up again. Frustrated, he finally threw himself onto the bed. "Fine. Sleep then. But I'm telling you now, it's not me who'll lose out here. I'm a delinquent. You know, I'm capable of anything." He tried to sound threatening, but his red face betrayed him as he turned away and put as much distance as possible between us. I couldn't help but grin and snuggled closer, wrapping my arms around him from behind. As my hands instinctively slid lower, he shot up, clutching the blanket around him. "Lila, What the hell are you doing? I looked at him innocently, holding onto his arm. You make me feel safe. Safe for you? What about me? He held onto himself defensively, like a chaste man guarding his virtue. Sometimes I really think I should call the cops on you. I pouted. But you love sleeping naked with me hugging you. His jaw dropped. Excuse me? Since when? In our last life, after we got married. You insisted on it. I replied, smirking. You even forced me to join you, saying skin-to-skin contact was more comfortable. I have to admit, though, it really was. Ryan stared at me, completely baffled. Lila, have you been possessed by some kind of demon that needs a man's energy to survive? I leaned in playfully. If I have, will you let me take some? His face turned a deep shade of red. Not a chance, he sputtered. Let me tell you something. I'm a good student, and I absolutely do not date early. I pouted dramatically. But I can't sleep without hugging you. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn. Finally, he sighed in defeat. Fine, but just hugging. Okay, I'm begging you here. He flopped back onto the bed with a mix of frustration and resignation. I couldn't help but marvel at how cute and clueless 18-year-old Ryan was. At 25, he was suave and a bit of a flirt. But 18-year-old Ryan? Pure and irresistible. Like a clueless puppy. I grinned mischievously. Can I just take a little peek at you? Peek at what? He sat up as if his tail had been stepped on, his ears burning red. Lila, are you even a girl? He didn't understand. At 28, my desires were far more developed than his innocent 18-year-old self could fathom. I bit my lip in frustration. Honey, even if I call you Dad, you won't agree. Huh. Fuming. He wrapped me tightly in a blanket like a burrito, pressing it down firmly. Sleep. And stop calling me honey. I nodded obediently. Okay, honey. Ryan sighed, utterly exasperated. But there was something comforting about his familiar scent and heartbeat. My Ryan was back. I gazed at his 18-year-old self and whispered, Ryan, I'm not possessed. I've actually come back from 10 years in the future. I'm the 28-year-old Lila. He scoffed. Oh yeah? Why not say you're a goddess who's descended from heaven? I'm serious. I really am from 10 years in the future. I insisted. He rolled his eyes. Fine, fine. You're from Mars for all I care. I smirked, an idea popping into my head. I leaned closer and whispered, You have a mole in a certain place. He froze, his body stiffening. His face was a mixture of shock and disbelief. What the hell? Lila, when did you sneak a look at me? Ryan asked, narrowing his eyes. I paused before answering. 7 years later. He hesitated. His curiosity piqued. Are you really from 10 years in the future? I nodded earnestly, and he couldn't resist asking. So, in 10 years, did I win the world championship? Of course. You became a world champion at 22. I replied enthusiastically. And by 25, you'd completed the Grand Slam. No one in the world could compete with you. Damn, I'm that amazing, he said, his face lighting up with excitement. Then, he turned to me, his tone softening. What about you? Did you become a famous dancer? I lowered my head slightly and nodded. Of course. And we got married. His voice held a mix of nervousness and careful hope. Really? Did we get together after high school? Yes, I said, smiling. After you won the world championship at 22. You proposed to me in front of everyone. His eyes sparkled with joy. Did we have kids? I smiled and nodded. Yes. After we both became unmatched in our fields. You retired at 28. And I gradually shifted my focus from the stage to teaching. That was the year we had our first child. My nose stung as I suppressed the wave of emotions threatening to surface. The truth was, in that other timeline, he never proposed after winning the world championship. I had stumbled through life aimlessly, and it wasn't until I was 25 that Ryan pulled me out of the darkness, only for me to drag him into it with me. But now, at 18, we still had time to make everything right. That night, I slept peacefully, waking up refreshed. Ryan had left early for training. He'd been swimming since he was 7 or 8, enduring over a decade of grueling, repetitive practice to push his body to its limits. The hardships he faced were far beyond anything a student cramming for exams could understand. When I arrived at the classroom, I ran into my homeroom teacher. "Oh, Lila, you're here. How's the rehearsal going for the graduation performance?" I blinked, momentarily confused, before my desk mate chimed in. "Lila's dance is amazing. She's choreographed everything so well. With Ethan's piano solo, it'll definitely be stunning. Our class is sure to win first place." The teacher nodded approvingly. "Great. Make sure you keep practicing." It hit me then that the graduation ceremony was approaching, and our class had planned a group dance performance featuring all the girls. The teacher had even encouraged us, saying this was a rare chance to relax together, and led the entire class to the dance studio for rehearsals. The performance was a classical dance, with Ethan accompanying us with piano and vocals from the side of the stage. Ethan had been playing piano since he was a child and was remarkably skilled. His voice was good too, and I'd begged him for ages to join us. He'd only agreed reluctantly. As we rehearsed in the studio, Sophie arrived late. A classmate couldn't resist making a snide comment. "Sophie, do you have to wait at home every time? Could you maybe develop a sense of teamwork?" Unfazed, Sophie replied calmly, "Sorry. The principal needed me to discuss the speeches Ethan and I will be giving as outstanding representatives at the graduation ceremony." Her voice was perfectly measured, carrying an air of superiority. Someone muttered under their breath, "Ugh, show off." Once Sophie joined the group, I resumed directing the rehearsal. "All right, let's review yesterday's moves, and then we'll run through the entire performance with Ethan's accompaniment." Everyone danced well, except Sophie, who kept missing the beat. The murmurs of discontent grew louder. "Sophie, what's going on? You didn't get the moves yesterday, and you said you'd practice at home. Why are you still behind today?" "Yeah, stop dragging us down. Aren't you supposed to be good at everything? Can't you handle something as simple as this?" The criticisms came one after another, and Sophie's expression darkened. She retorted coldly, "This is just a silly graduation performance. Why should I waste my study time on it? Maybe you should focus on your grades before criticizing others. Isn't it embarrassing to waste your youth on something so meaningless? What's the point of this dance? It's not like it'll help with college admissions." Her words ignited a fire in me. I couldn't hold back my anger. "Sophie, you're the one who showed up late and didn't practice the moves. Why are you blaming everyone else for your mistakes?" Ryan chuckled coldly. "Lila, you're the one trying to show off. Why drag others into being your backdrop?" Someone couldn't hold back and retorted, "This is a group performance for the class. How is it just Lila trying to stand out? She's a dance student. If she doesn't lead, should we let someone like you, who can't even coordinate left and right, take the lead?" The room erupted in laughter. Sophie's face darkened with embarrassment, but she quickly scoffed. "I don't have time to argue with you. This is beneath me." Her words irritated everyone. Sophie wasn't well liked in the class. She'd once loftily declared, "I don't like hanging out with girls. They're too petty. I'm not like them." And she wasn't. While most of us secretly read romantic novels, she read complex poetry collections. When the teacher asked her to explain a math problem, she'd write out convoluted equations and say they were calculus formulas that only college students would understand. Probably only Ethan could follow her. Many of the girls found her pretentious, but Ethan saw her as a kindred spirit. He even thought I was the one leading the charge to ostracize and bully Sophie. Whenever he stood up for her, she'd dismissively say, "Forget it. I don't argue with fools," which only made Ethan admire her more. Some classmates had joked that Ethan, the academic prodigy, would only ever fall for a girl who could match him intellectually. Their conversations were always cerebral, unlike his interactions with me, a simple-minded art student in his eyes. I clapped my hands and said nonchalantly, "If that's how you feel, Sophie, then maybe you shouldn't dance. After all, your dancing is pretty hilarious." Laughter erupted again, and Sophie's face turned red with anger. She couldn't even respond. Ethan, unable to stand it anymore, spoke up. "Lila, do you have to be so mean?" "Mean?" I scoffed. "Ethan, do you remember what you said to me in the last life after I broke my leg? You told me, 'Lila, the way you walk is hilarious.'" "I'm just borrowing your tone." Ethan's eyes flashed with anger. Are you all seriously ganging up on Sophie? Haven't you had enough? He turned to Sophie and declared, if you quit, I'll quit too. Sophie's eyes reddened with emotion. Ethan. I shrugged with a smile. That's great. Go ahead and quit. In the previous life, Sophie didn't want me to shine, so she intentionally fell during the performance, right in front of Ethan. Instinctively, Ethan bent down to help her, and the performance ground to a halt, plunging into awkward silence. The class panicked, losing the rhythm and fumbling through disorganized moves. The incident, however, brought Ethan and Sophie praise. Their academic excellence already endeared them to the teachers, and the homeroom teacher commended Ethan's actions, saying, friendship comes first, competition second. The teacher even gave them a special award for their camaraderie. During the award ceremony, Sophie waved at me and said, Lila, could you take a picture of us? The entire audience gave them thunderous applause as they beamed brightly for the cameras, while the girls in our class cried quietly backstage. After Ethan and Sophie quit, the class struggled to salvage the performance. Someone suggested, Lila, maybe we should just play the music without dancing. I waved my hand. No need. We have someone who can step in. In the last life, when I was battling severe depression, Ryan often held me and sang softly in my ear. His singing voice was incredible. Later, when my leg healed, he encouraged me to return to dance and perform on stage again. I danced while he played the piano as my accompaniment. I pulled out my phone and called him. Ryan, we need you to do a piano solo and sing for our performance. Without missing a beat, he replied, I can't. I played my trump card. Honey. Shut up, he interrupted, clearly flustered. Fine. I'm coming. I couldn't help but laugh. His response was practically Pavlovian by now. Ryan, begrudging but quick, arrived soon after. When Ethan and Sophie heard about it, they couldn't believe it. Ryan, how could he possibly fill in for the performance? Ethan sneered. What can a jock even play on the piano? In Ethan's eyes, both athletes and art students were destined for failure. But his skepticism didn't dampen our enthusiasm. When the lights came up and the performance began, I led the entire group of girls in a graceful dance. The soothing piano notes and Ryan's deep, melodic voice filled the auditorium, leaving everyone stunned. The applause and cheers from the audience were deafening. That was incredible. Our class is amazing. Someone joked. Ryan, what other surprises are you hiding? You might as well debut as a singer. After the performance, Ryan walked over to me, a proud smirk on his face. So? Didn't embarrass you? Right. I looked at him, practically seeing pink hearts in my eyes. Honey, you were amazing. He raised his head smugly. Of course I was. Our performance was a huge success and unsurprisingly won first place. Ryan and I went on stage to accept the award on behalf of our class. The principal looked at us with great satisfaction. I never expected our students to be this talented. In previous years, we've always chosen top academic performers to represent the school. But true excellence lies in well-rounded development. I believe our students will shine in all fields in the future. So, Lila and Ryan, why don't you both give the speech as our outstanding representatives? We were caught off guard by the suggestion, scanning the audience. I noticed Sophie tightly clutching her prepared speech, her face full of frustration. Ethan's gaze met ours, his expression unreadable. Standing on the stage, I took a deep breath. Hello, everyone. My name is Lila. My mom was an exceptional classical dancer, and under her influence, I started dancing at the age of 7. From basic training to countless falls and getting back up, I've never once thought of giving up. Dance has taught me not only grace but resilience, determination, and the relentless pursuit of dreams. My dream is to attend the Beijing Dance Academy and win the Taoli Cup. Ryan stepped forward, his tall figure standing confidently. Hello, everyone. I'm Ryan, an athlete who loves swimming. From the fear and despair of nearly drowning at 8 years old to the freedom I now feel in the water at 18. Every day of training has tested both my body and my will. Failure, pain, and doubt have never stopped me because I have a dream. He paused, his usual playful demeanor replaced with unwavering determination. My dream is to attend the Beijing Sports University and win an Olympic gold medal. The applause from the audience was thunderous. At 18, the dreams we had left unfulfilled in another life felt closer than ever. After the awards ceremony, we stepped off the stage. Surrounded by our classmates, the girls huddled around the trophy, eager to take pictures. "Let's get a group photo," someone suggested. Smiling, I turned and waved at Sophie. "Sophie, could you take a picture for us? After all, you're the only one who didn't participate." Sophie gritted her teeth but held back her anger as she raised her phone to snap the photo. Ryan strode over to Ethan, handing him the phone with a smug grin. "Hey, genius, take a picture of me and my wife, will you?" Ethan's face darkened as he took the phone. After snapping the photo, he handed it back with a curt, "Is this okay?" Ryan glanced at the picture and grinned cheekily. "It's all right, but can I trouble you for one more? My wife isn't satisfied." That was the last straw for Ethan. He exploded. "Ryan, who do you think you are?" Ryan casually wrapped an arm around my shoulder and flashed a dazzling smile. "Me? I'm Lila's husband. Of course." Ethan's face turned livid as he glared at Ryan, clenching his teeth. "You? A delinquent athlete? You think you're worthy of Lila? Olympic gold medal? What a joke." I stepped forward, staring Ethan down with a cold smirk. "Ryan, if I remember correctly, your mock exam score placed you 25th in the province. And his recent competition results? 2nd in the province, 5th nationally. So tell me, Ethan, who's the real failure here? Where do you get the nerve to look down on him?" I tugged on Ryan's sleeve, turning to walk beside him. "Send me that photo. I'm going to set it as my wallpaper." "Wait," he said, grinning. "I need to touch it up first. You're too pale. It makes me look darker." I couldn't help but laugh. "How can a guy be whiter than me?" "It's from all the chlorine in the pool," he replied smugly. After school, I walked home with Ethan, who stopped me halfway. I frowned, annoyed. "What do you want?" He explained. "Aren't you aiming for Beijing Dance Academy? I'll help you with your academic studies." "There's no need," I said flatly. In the past, his tutoring sessions had been anything but helpful. He'd always seemed irritated, unable to understand how I struggled with concepts he found simple. Every time he tried to help me, it felt like a chore for him. "The thing with the performance earlier was my fault," he said, lowering his stance. His voice softened. "Don't stay mad." "All right." I let out a cold laugh. "Ethan, I was never mad at you, and I don't need you to worry about my studies. If you're bored, why don't you go talk to Sophie about poetry or life philosophy?" "I don't like Sophie," he said quickly, trying to clarify. "I promise, after the college entrance exams, I'll choose Beijing. Once we graduate, we'll be together. I swear." I raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "But didn't you and Sophie just apply to overseas universities?" He froze. "Lila, that's just to try it out. I don't actually plan on going." I found his response utterly ridiculous. In my past life, he'd made the same promise to me, said we'd go to Beijing together. But on the day of my arts exam, Sophie deliberately told me. Ethan asked me where I wanted to go to college. I said abroad. So he applied to the same school with me. "Didn't he tell you?" Sophie had worn a smug expression, radiating superiority. "Lila, how long are you going to cling to him? He doesn't like you. The only person who deserves Ethan is me. And I'm the only one worthy of him." Her words had rattled me so much that I failed my audition for my dream school. When I confronted Ethan about it, he brushed it off, saying that studying abroad had better advantages. He admitted to being in a relationship with me but claimed I needed to wait. Once he graduated, we'd get married. I believed him. But after he graduated, he said he needed to focus on his career first. He and Sophie started a business together, riding the wave of industry success. The media praised them as a perfect match, a golden couple. Meanwhile, I danced in an obscure troupe, my performances lacking emotion. My teachers often said I had potential but lacked heart in my movements. Ethan's promises of marriage were delayed over and over until they vanished completely. Looking at the calendar, I saw the number 16 circled. The college entrance exams were getting closer. This time, I wouldn't chase after Ethan anymore. He'd be leaving for another country soon anyway. In Ryan's tiny apartment, the two of us crammed like mad for our exams. Who signed the Treaty of Shimonoseki? I asked. Not me, he shot back. I know it wasn't you. I groaned. He smirked. There's a fish in the northern abyss, called Kuin. Kuin is so big. So big a single pot can't cook it. I interrupted, rolling my eyes. After hours of studying, we slumped over our books. Let's eat, he said. This stuff is frying my brain. Late into the night, we worked until exhaustion finally overtook us. This knowledge felt like it was slipping through our fingers, but at least we were trying. The next morning, bright and early, when Ryan and I left his apartment, we unexpectedly ran into Ethan and his parents. Their faces were stiff with shock and anger, and Ethan was the first to speak. Lila, he snapped. You haven't been staying in the school dorms at all, have you? You've been living at his place this whole time. I didn't deny it. That's right. Ethan's parents immediately looked outraged. Lila, how could you, a decent young woman, behave so shamelessly? Mrs. Shun scolded. We've treated you like our own daughter since you were a child, raised you as a proper young lady, and yet you've degraded yourself by cohabiting with a delinquent. Go home with us right now. I stood still, quietly listening to their harsh words, and then calmly responded, Uncle, Auntie, I appreciate everything you've done for me over the years. I truly do. But I'm an adult now. I can walk my own path. They were taken aback as I continued. It's true that you've spent a lot of money raising me since my parents passed away, and I'm grateful for that. But the assets my parents left behind were managed by you. The profits from those investments should more than cover any expenses you've incurred raising me. I won't reclaim those funds. Consider them my way of repaying your kindness. However, from now on, I won't trouble you any further. I'll have my lawyer handle the formalities for the transition. At my words, their faces twisted in a mix of shock and fury. Lila, do you think we raised you just for your family's money? Mrs. Shun spat. You truly are ungrateful. Just like they say about orphans. We never once looked down on your intelligence or treated you differently because you're not our own. We raised you to be our future daughter-in-law. And this is how you repay us? Do you think your parents would approve of this behavior? Watching from the afterlife. Memories from my past life flashed through my mind. Back then, I'd naively believed their words, desperately struggling to gain their approval despite their cold indifference. This time, I wouldn't let them trample over me. Oh, you raised me as your daughter? As your future daughter-in-law. I let out a bitter laugh. In my past life, everyone was obsessed with Ethan and Sophie's perfect love story. And no one knew about me, the official girlfriend. I couldn't take it anymore and exposed my relationship with Ethan online. In my previous life, the Shuns were furious. Lila, do you realize you've ruined Ethan's image and hurt his career? They had yelled at me. He's already acknowledged you as his girlfriend, and we've accepted you. What more do you want? Why are you so bitter and jealous every day? Look at Sophie. She's exceptional. Why can't you be more like her? During interviews, they dismissed me as if I were insignificant. Lila grew up engaged to Ethan through a childhood arrangement. They told the media. Her parents passed away early, and out of pity, we adopted her and treated her as one of our own. She's always clung to Ethan like a little sister. That narrative put my name on every gossip blog. Childhood engagement? Who even does arranged marriages anymore? People mocked. They took her in, and she repaid them with ingratitude? What a leech. Sophie and Ethan became the darlings of the media, hailed as a campus power couple. Meanwhile, I was labeled a scheming girl who clung to Ethan and bullied Sophie in school. There were even rumors about my dancing career, that I performed inappropriate routines and had plastic surgery to compete with Sophie's natural goddess looks. I was doxxed, cyberbullied, and abandoned by the world, and it was all thanks to them. This time, I wouldn't let history repeat itself. Don't come crying to us when you regret it later. Mrs. Shun snarled, as if predicting my bleak future. Ethan, standing off to the side, seemed both stunned and infuriated by my words and actions. Lila, he demanded angrily, what the hell are you doing? How could you talk to my parents like that? Do you even have a conscience? Ethan asked angrily. I scoffed, curling my lips into a cold smile. Nope. I'm a heartless ingrate. Please. Just leave me alone. Ethan's parents pulled him away, glaring at him. We're going home. From now on, you're not to have any contact with her. I stood there silently for a long time. So long that I didn't realize Ryan had suddenly stepped forward and hugged me tightly. In a low voice, he asked, Lila, did you lie to me? Were you unhappy in your past life? My eyelids fluttered, and a lump rose in my throat. The truth was, we hadn't ended up together after high school. I'd spent years chasing Ethan, only to end up battered and broken. By the time I was 25, my depression had gotten so severe that I attempted suicide. I fell from the stage during a performance, and that was when Ryan appeared. He told me, Lila, I'm a world champion now. Let's get married. I'll make you the happiest woman in the world and piss off those two scumbags. On the day we registered our marriage, he announced in front of the media, this is my wife, the girl I've secretly loved for years. People criticized him, calling him foolish and blinded by love. Many of his fans abandoned him, but he didn't care. He said, athletes prove themselves with results, not opinions. He took me to the best doctors, helped me recover my legs, and supported me through rehab. When I felt anxious, he played the piano and sang for me. At night, he held me as I slept, becoming my one and only remedy for insomnia. Slowly, I healed, returning to the stage. I hugged him tightly, leaning close to his ear. Every day with you was happiness. He gently patted my back, again and again, but I still showed up too late. Leaning against Ryan's chest, I made sure he couldn't see the tears in my eyes. I didn't tell him the whole truth, that our happiness hadn't lasted forever. Ryan married me at the peak of his career. He'd achieved the Grand Slam and was a national hero, but an athlete's golden years are fleeting, and no one stays at the top forever. Expectations for him were impossibly high. Even placing second in a competition would lead to accusations that I was a distraction, pulling him away from his training. During one such competition, he was already injured and running a fever before the event. I begged him to withdraw, but a crazed fan attacked me with a knife, shouting that I was ruining his career. Without hesitation, Ryan stepped in front of me, shielding me from the blade. As the college entrance exams approached, Ryan and I juggled cramming for academics while honing our respective skills. Fortunately, his hard work paid off when he won the provincial championship in a new competition. Meanwhile, I poured everything into preparing for my arts exams. On the day of my test, I clutched Ryan's gold medal for luck, rubbing it like a talisman. With its magical boost, I performed steadily and even ended up placing first in the exam rankings. After walking out of the exam hall, I wanted to give Ryan a big hug to celebrate, but instead, I unexpectedly ran into a famous idol I admired. He was taller and even more handsome in person, and to my shock, he greeted me. Hello. Your dance just now was amazing. I nearly lost my mind with excitement, immediately turning to Ryan. Take a picture of us, I demanded, practically shoving my phone at him. The idol glanced at Ryan, whose face was dark with displeasure, and asked curiously, Oh, who's he? He's my classmate, I replied casually. On the way home, Ryan sulked, grumbling like a jealous lover. Classmate? Just a classmate? Why didn't you call me your husband? Huh, got what you wanted and now you don't care, right? I'm just a joke to you now. Huh, just a sidekick. I smirked and leaned closer. You want me to kiss you in front of everyone? He shut up immediately, his cheeks turning red. I poked him lightly in the side. So, when can I kiss you? Blushing even harder, he muttered. When no one's around. It wasn't long before our college entrance exam results were released. Both Ryan and I passed the required thresholds and received admission offers from our dream schools. What I hadn't anticipated, however, was that Ethan didn't end up studying abroad. Instead, he and Sophie both got into the same university in Beijing. Their partnership as top-performing students continued to cause a stir on campus. They still competed together, still won awards together. Someone even posted a photo of the two on the university forum, captioned, "A match made in heaven." However, when confronted with the rumors, Ethan outright denied them. We're just classmates. I already have someone I like. Later, People began to notice that Ethan really did have someone he liked. He frequently attended classical dance performances, always holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Speculation arose that the flowers were meant for the girl he admired. By then, Ryan and I were already sophomores. Ryan's outstanding performance had earned him a spot on the national team, while I became an overnight sensation after performing choreography for a hit TV drama. Comments flooded in. "Lila's dance is phenomenal. No wonder she ranked first in the arts exam back then. Wow, this girl is stunning. Has she considered joining the entertainment industry? I heard she has a live performance soon. Tickets are selling out fast." Every performance I did was sold out, and it didn't take long for people to notice that at each show. There was always a boy in the front row holding a bouquet of sunflowers, quietly watching the stage. Eventually, someone uncovered his identity, a top student at a prestigious university who happened to be my childhood friend. This revelation sent the internet into a frenzy, with fans eagerly shipping us as a couple. But just as the buzz reached its peak, Sophie posted a photo of herself and Ethan at a competition, captioned, "The one who understands me best." This time, however, she was met with backlash. "Girl, didn't Ethan already deny you? He said you're just classmates. Why are you still clinging to him? Trying to leech off others' fame? Huh, desperate much?" Sophie looked down on everyone just because of her grades back in school. No wonder people disliked her. Who are you to come between childhood sweethearts? Ethan's never been into you, so stop embarrassing yourself. The gossip spread like wildfire, and Ethan's parents even took the opportunity to give a media interview. "Lila is our future daughter-in-law," they said confidently. "She and Ethan have been childhood sweethearts since they were little. After her parents passed away, we brought her into our home, supported her dancing career, and treated her as our own daughter." Watching their sudden change in attitude, I couldn't help but laugh. I answered every one of their calls pretending to accept their goodwill, only to turn around and post a copy of the contract I'd hired a lawyer to draft back then. The contract made it crystal clear how much profit they'd made from managing my family's assets over the years. People online were outraged. Wow, and here I thought they were such kind people. Turns out they were living off her inheritance. "Lila's been dancing since she was 7. What do you mean you supported her? They've been bleeding her dry and still expect her to be grateful? Disgusting." The media bombarded me with questions about my relationship with Ethan. "Is it true that you and Ethan are childhood sweethearts?" they asked. I thought for a moment and casually replied online, "We're from the same village, but we're not that close." Then I turned around and posted on social media, tagging Ryan, "This is my not yet legal husband." Almost instantly, Ryan's account gained countless followers. Comments poured in. "Oh my gosh, no wonder Lila has such good taste. This guy's definitely national property. Those broad shoulders, that perfect body, those long legs. Imagine the energy sleeping beside him must bring. This is peak human compatibility. I'm in awe." That night, I did, in fact, sleep on top of his 8-pack abs, feeling extraordinarily satisfied. Ryan was no longer the easily flustered boy who used to jump at a single touch. His techniques were refined, his energy boundless. But as much as I enjoyed it, I eventually couldn't keep up. "Haven't you already swum 3.000 meters today? How do you still have this much energy? Go to sleep. I'm exhausted." I swatted at his wandering hands, trying to fix my disheveled clothes. He effortlessly dodged and, in a low, playful voice, said, "Wife, how can you sleep with clothes on?" After one of my performances, I saw Ethan again. He was standing there, holding flowers, looking forlorn. He truly was pitiful in a way. When I chased after him back then, he barely acknowledged me. Now that I'd stopped, he clung to me like an unwanted stray dog. "Lila," he began, his voice rough, "I know I hurt you before. I did so many things that broke your heart. But I really do love you. All these years, I've been waiting for you to turn back and look at me." His head hung low, his eyes red as he spoke. "I don't understand why you stopped caring about me all of a sudden." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. But the memories of my past life surged forward like a nightmare I couldn't escape. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling, "I once had a dream. In that dream, After graduation, you left me and went abroad with Sophie. You promised we'd get married after you graduated. So I waited for you. And waited. And waited. But when you finally graduated, you told me you needed to focus on your career first and asked me to wait again. Then you and Sophie started a business together. You spent all your time with her, admiring her, working side by side. To everyone else, you two were the perfect couple, a golden pair. No one even knew I was supposed to be your girlfriend. I clenched my fists, suppressing the bitterness that threatened to choke me. I begged you, Ethan. I begged you to come see my performance just once. Even if you brought me a single flower, I would have forgiven you. But you never came. Ethan froze, his expression one of disbelief. After a long silence, he said, "Those small venues, they didn't match my status. Do you know how busy I was every day?" I laughed bitterly. Yes, you were busy. Busy going on dates with Sophie, traveling the world with her, meeting her parents. And me? I waited for you, year after year. I was so unwilling to give up. But what did it matter? To everyone else, I was just the jealous, evil side character in your story. My voice broke as I continued. I was sick for a long time, Ethan. I tried to kill myself, over and over again. I thought maybe my pain would finally matter to you. But you grew tired of my pleas, of my emotional blackmail. You finally said, "Fine, I'll marry you if that'll shut you up." Ethan's face turned pale. I would never. I cut him off. But right before the wedding, Sophie sent me her pregnancy report. And me? I fell off the stage and became a cripple. After that, your parents handed me a sum of money and told me to disappear from your life. And I did. I closed my eyes, my throat tightening. In the end, that's all there was. That's how it ended. Ethan stood there, stunned, scrambling to explain. Lila, no, I would never do that. I wouldn't. I'm not like that. I told you. I would always protect you. Ethan said softly, his voice tinged with desperation. It was just a dream. I replied indifferently, shaking my head. No, Ethan, it wasn't just a dream. I may not be smart, but I'm not a fool either. I looked straight into his eyes. Do you really love me? No, you don't. You're just unwilling to let go. You're so clever. You know what I like, what makes me unhappy, and exactly how to comfort me. But you refused to do any of it. You let me suffer over and over because you enjoyed the attention. You liked Sophie's admiration, too. You just wanted it all. I exhaled sharply, my voice firm. Keep your cheap feelings to yourself. I don't want them. And you don't deserve me. After Ryan entered the national team, he began competing in international events, constantly breaking his own records and dazzling the world with his brilliance. Meanwhile, I gained modest fame and focused wholeheartedly on preparing for the Towley Cup, the most prestigious award in the dance world. My mother's greatest regret before she passed was never winning the championship, and I was determined to pour every ounce of effort into fulfilling that dream for her. Ryan and I barely saw each other, our time together limited to brief moments. On one rare occasion, we met near campus for a date. We had barely walked a few steps when a car suddenly sped toward us at an intersection. Without hesitation, Ryan reacted instinctively, shielding me with his body. A deafening crash followed, and we both fell to the ground. Images of him covered in blood from my previous life flashed through my mind. My heart clenched as if an invisible hand was gripping it tightly. Trembling, I screamed his name. Ryan, Ryan, wife, I'm fine, he stammered, trying to reassure me with shaky hands. Don't cry. Don't cry. It's just a scratch. Tears streamed down my face as I reached out with trembling hands, gently touching his face. My voice broke as I sobbed. You idiot. You scared me to death. You didn't die. You're not dead. I hugged him tightly, my entire body shaking. From now on, you're not allowed to get hurt. You're not allowed to bleed. And you're definitely not allowed to protect me like that again. He nodded repeatedly. Okay. But deep down, I knew that no matter how many times we started over, in the face of danger, his first instinct would always be to shield me. It wasn't until much later that we regained our composure and realized the driver of the car was Sophie. She stepped out, staring at me with wide, lifeless eyes. her face pale as a ghost. "Lila, you didn't die," she whispered, her voice trembling. Her features had changed drastically, her face unnaturally stiff, bearing obvious signs of plastic surgery. Rumors had circulated for some time that Sophie had undergone multiple cosmetic procedures, but I'd never paid attention to them. Now, seeing her in person, it was clear the rumors were true. Back in high school, some classmates had gossiped that Sophie had confessed her feelings to Ethan, only for him to reject her outright. He told her bluntly that her actions were disgraceful. Sophie, unwilling to give up, had asked him why, and Ethan had replied coldly, "Look in the mirror. You might find your answer there." The internet had been merciless, mocking her appearance and labeling her an ugly girl trying too hard. That ridicule drove her to undergo surgery after surgery, but the more she altered her face, the less satisfied she became. It was said her family wasn't particularly wealthy, so she turned to online loans, which eventually caused her to fall behind in her studies. The school issued disciplinary actions against her, and when she couldn't repay her debts, she reportedly became the mistress of a middle-aged businessman. Now, Sophie glared at me with wild, red-rimmed eyes, her voice a hysterical scream. "It's all because of you. My entire life was ruined because of you. Lila." She stepped closer, her expression twisted with madness. "Why do you get to be adored by everyone while I'm forced to live in the shadows? I was so much better than you." I smiled calmly. Perhaps it's karma. I looked at Sophie, who had once been so arrogant and proud but now stood before me in complete ruin. After a brief silence, I said, "Call the police." The year I graduated from college, all my hard work finally paid off. I won the Towley Cup. The moment I stepped off the stage, I saw Ryan in the audience, holding a large bouquet of flowers and waving enthusiastically. I ran to him, unable to contain my joy, and jumped into his arms. "Did I look beautiful up there?" I asked, grinning. "Beautiful? You looked like an enchantress," he replied, staring at me with the dazed expression of a man completely captivated. He joked about understanding why the infamous King Zhou fell for Dodgy. I get it now. Totally get it. That same year, Ryan represented our country at the Olympics. At 22, he powered through the water with unparalleled speed and determination, shattering the world record and surpassing expectations once again. During the medal ceremony, as the national flag rose, Ryan's eyes reddened with emotion. When the reporters interviewed him afterward, he couldn't hold back his tears. "Thank you to my country," he choked out. "Thank you to my coach. And thank you to my wife." His voice cracked, and tears rolled down his cheeks. The more he cried, the harder it became for him to stop. The reporters, flustered but amused, turned to me. "You better say yes to him, or we'll never calm him down." I couldn't help but laugh at his antics. I walked over, hugged him, and slipped the ring onto my finger. All right, I'll marry you later." Still blushing, he asked, "Wife, was I embarrassing just now?" I sighed. "Not too bad, I guess." He raised both hands solemnly. "Next time, I swear I won't cry." I rolled my eyes. "You always say that. And yet, every single time, you end up sobbing like a baby. I think half the water in the pool comes from your tears." In the years that followed, Ryan brought home one honor after another for our country, while I worked tirelessly to reach even greater stages in my dance career. At 28, Ryan retired from competitive swimming, his achievements unparalleled. He began coaching younger athletes, helping them break the records he once set. Around the same time, I stepped away from the spotlight, dedicating myself to teaching the next generation of dancers. That year, we decided it was time to start a family. One night, I voiced my concerns. "Do you think our child might, end up being really dumb?" Ryan chuckled. "If they're brilliant, they'll serve the country. If they're ordinary, they'll make us happy. Either way, it'll be fine." Both of us had grown up without complete families or unconditional love. Together, we vowed to raise our child in the way we had always longed to be nurtured. On the 10th anniversary of our graduation, we were invited back to our alma mater as distinguished alumni. Several of our old classmates were there too. During the reunion, someone brought up a familiar name. "Hey, Have you guys heard about Ethan? I heard his family went bankrupt. They continued. Apparently, he made a ton of money after college by buying land and building properties, but when the market crashed, his investments failed, and his company went under. He lost everything and even faced legal action. Hearing his name, I momentarily spaced out. It felt so distant, like a name I'd once known but no longer recognized. Lila, didn't you used to like him back in the day? Someone teased. I shook my head furiously. Not a chance. Congratulations, Luna. I heard your family got a 3-bedroom apartment this time. Luna, you really have amazing luck. The envious whispers buzzed around me. I closed the courtyard door behind me, their voices still lingering in the air. As soon as I entered, I went straight to Ryan's room. Taking a deep breath, I opened the desk drawer with trembling hands. Inside a square, metallic tin for mooncakes, I found my stash of money, still untouched. I counted it carefully. Exactly $900. Not a cent more or less. In my previous life, Emma used this money to buy an apartment, and 10 years later, she achieved financial freedom. But this time, I planned to be bolder. I would take this money and head south. Ryan and I were originally set to get married on the 18th of next month, according to the lunar calendar. But in this life, that wedding will never happen. I tucked the money close to me, preparing to leave, when I overheard voices outside the door. Startled, I hurried back to my own room. Ryan, are you really giving me your apartment buying quota? A woman's voice, clear and filled with disbelief and joy, reached my ears. I froze. In my past life, I only knew that Emma had used Ryan's money to buy her apartment. I hadn't realized that even the purchasing quota came from him. My eyes burned as I bit my lip hard. You and your son, living under someone else's roof, need this apartment more than I do. Ryan replied softly, his tone gentle, completely unlike the indifferent way he spoke to me. I listened as Emma thanked him profusely, her excitement evident. Then she hesitated. But even if I have the quota, I might not be able to afford it. Ryan didn't immediately reply. You know how it is, Ryan. My son is still young, and raising him is expensive, with just odd jobs here and there. I haven't saved up much. Her words hung in the air for a moment before Ryan finally said, I'll figure out the money. Don't worry about it. After a few more polite refusals from Emma, the two of them left. Only then did I emerge from my room. In my past life, when I heard that Emma had earned hundreds of thousands from the apartment she bought, I had been genuinely envious. Back then, Ryan had only made a dismissive remark as he ate his meal. It's just fate. If it's not meant for you, don't bother wishing for it. I had believed him, thinking Emma's good fortune was simply destiny. How was I to know that her good fortune was actually Ryan's sacrifices, along with mine, handed over to her? If not for Emma's slip of the tongue in my previous life, admitting that Ryan had helped her buy that apartment, I would have died clueless. How deep must his love for her have been? Deep enough to willingly let himself, me, and even our child live crammed into a 300-square-foot apartment while gifting money and a home to her. And then he had the audacity to tell me it was just fate. When the two of them had finally left, I sat silently in the room for a long time. By dusk, I went into Ryan's room, retrieved the mooncake tin, and placed it on the dining table. That evening, I made chicken soup and steamed a large pot of rice for myself. After eating, I opened the tin. Inside, besides my money, there was also Ryan's 2 years of savings, exactly $2.600. Additionally, I found his workplace's housing purchase certificate and some receipts for daily expenses. When Ryan returned, he saw the open tin and frowned. What are you doing with that? He asked irritably. In the past, I would have rushed to greet him with a smile as soon as he came home. Ryan was an impressive-looking man, tall and well-educated. After graduating from university, he worked at a research institute. I had been utterly satisfied with him as my fiancé, even wholeheartedly in love. But reality had proven me wrong. It was only today that I learned my father had borrowed money from a few colleagues back then. I planned to use some of this money to pay them back first. My mother passed away early, and my father was a middle school teacher. He was always dedicated and selfless. especially toward his students. Ryan was one of them. Back then, Ryan's family was struggling, and my father not only tutored him for free but also secretly slipped him pocket money several times. In fact, some of Ryan's high school tuition was covered by my father. Ryan wasn't the only student my father helped, of course. So, despite being a teacher all his life, my father barely saved any money. Sometimes, when there were big expenses at home, he even had to borrow from his colleagues. When I mentioned this, Ryan didn't suspect a thing. "How much is still owed?" he asked after a pause. $3,100. I replied evenly. "How could it be that much?" Ryan said instinctively. "The IOUs are in there," I said, pretending to stand up. He quickly waved me off. "That won't be necessary. I trust you." After a moment, he hesitated and asked, "Can we delay the repayment for a while?" I glanced at him without replying. Of course, I knew what he was planning. To give that money to Emma. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Dream on. I was preparing to head south to start fresh, and I couldn't leave without money. Ryan didn't dare take the money back. He simply said, "Keep the box here for now." Before leaving, after he was gone, I retrieved my father's account book. My father might have been overly generous, but at least he had a habit of recording every expense. I carefully went through it and listed every penny he had spent on Ryan over the years. The total shocked me. Beyond covering Ryan's high school tuition and living expenses, my father had also helped him during college. When I added it all up, it came to over $2,800. That was the equivalent of 3 years of my father's salary if he didn't spend a single penny on himself. I took $2,800 out of the money Ryan had saved in the mooncake tin. As for the remaining $200 or so, I decided to consider it a loss. I carefully hid the money, planning to return the tin to Ryan tomorrow. What's rightfully mine, I'll take without guilt. But what isn't mine, I won't touch, not even a cent. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, I heard Emma's voice coming from outside. I was stirring rice in the pot when her sobbing caught my attention. "They're too much. How could they hit you?" she cried. My hand froze. I stepped out of the kitchen and saw Emma, her eyes red and swollen, her long hair draped over her shoulders. She looked small and pitiful, practically curled into Ryan's arms. "What's going on here?" I asked, my voice cutting through the scene. Hearing me, Emma quickly turned her head and wiped her tears before glancing at me. "Don't misunderstand, Luna. I didn't want to bother anyone, so I came to see Ryan. The three of us had known each other since childhood. 10 years ago, most of the homes here were still wooden, and families lived close together. Back then, Ryan and Emma lived in the same courtyard and often played together as kids. Then came the fire. That fire, though it didn't claim any lives, burned several streets worth of houses to the ground. Afterward, everyone rebuilt their homes separately. Emma eventually married a tailor's apprentice but was widowed shortly after, nearly losing her mind from grief. It was with Ryan's help that she managed to return to her family home. When Ryan said Emma was living under someone else's roof, he meant that after moving back, Emma often clashed with her sister-in-law. Each time, she would run to Ryan for help, and he always stepped in, taking care of everything. Looking back now, it was laughable that in my previous life, I genuinely believed Ryan only saw Emma as a sister. "Ryan's about to get married," I said coldly. "You throwing yourself into his arms like that isn't appropriate. People might think you're planning to remarry." I added pointedly, "And you know, being a widow remarrying isn't exactly a great reputation to have." Even though I had no intention of continuing this engagement, I couldn't help but jab at her. Emma's expression shifted immediately, and she instinctively glanced at Ryan. Ryan frowned and scolded me. "What nonsense are you talking about?" I let out a sneer and ignored the both of them, returning to the kitchen to finish cooking. The sound of Emma's crying resumed outside, mixed with Ryan's attempts to comfort her. It went on for quite a while before things finally quieted down. After breakfast, I went to the factory where I worked as a quality inspector. I had been assigned to this job after graduating from high school. The factory was doing well enough now, but I knew that within a few years, economic conditions would worsen, and the factory would face restructuring. That was when I had been laid off in my previous life. Coming back this time, I was well aware that the factory's profits were already in decline. Even if most people hadn't realized the severity of the situation yet, I planned to sell my job quota while it still had value. Fortune favors the bold. Those who dared to take risks during the early days of economic reform reaped the rewards. Back then, becoming a 10,000-aire wasn't just a title, it was a badge of success. However, finding the right buyer for my quota would take some careful consideration. On my way home after work, I found myself wandering near the plot of land where, in my previous life, Emma had bought her apartment. Right now, it was still an overgrown field of weeds, but within 3 years, towering high-rises would spring up here. And a decade later, property prices would have multiplied countless times. In my previous life, Emma had secured her future with that apartment. This time, without the money to buy it, she would have no connection to it. When I got home, I was surprised to see Ryan there. He had never been one to spend time in the kitchen, yet he had prepared several dishes. "You're back. Go wash up. It'll be ready soon," he said casually. Having someone else cook was fine by me, so I didn't object. Dinner was unexpectedly lavish, with meat, vegetables, and even fish. It was clear he had spent a lot on this meal, but it didn't take long for his true intentions to show. As we began eating, Ryan's expression grew hesitant, as though he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I kept my head down, eating silently as though I hadn't noticed. Ryan wasn't used to me ignoring him like this. He fidgeted, trying to start a conversation but unable to figure out how. Before he could speak, Emma showed up again. The wind outside was strong, and Ryan, ever considerate, invited her in and handed her a cup of hot tea. Emma sat down, her face bright with happiness as she thanked me. "Thank you so much for agreeing to let me have the housing quota, and even lending me money to buy the apartment." I glanced at her, feigning ignorance. "What quota? What housing quota?" Emma froze, her smile faltering as unease crept into her expression. She stood up nervously and looked at Ryan. "Ryan," she stammered, "does your fiancé not know you gave me the housing quota?" Ryan remained silent, his eyes on me. Emma's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, but her tone remained apologetic. "Oh dear, Ryan, I know you care about me and my son, but you really should have discussed such a big decision with your future wife. Even if you're not married yet, it's still your property to handle." "Oh, look at me. I've said too much. I'll take my leave now. Goodbye, Ryan." "Goodbye, Luna." Ryan comforted her softly. "It's fine. It's my decision to make. Don't worry about it." After she left, I continued eating my meal calmly, showing no reaction. It wasn't until I finished the last bite and stood to leave that Ryan finally spoke. "Luna, can we talk?" I sat back down, my expression indifferent. He hesitated before saying, "I'm sorry, but could we delay repaying the money for now?" "No," I said firmly. My refusal left no room for negotiation. If he chose to pay willingly, that was fine. But if he tried to take the money back, well, we would see. I took out my father's account book. Since the money was in my hands now, Ryan could forget about using it to fill the bottomless pit that was Emma's life. "And about this so-called housing quota," I said sharply. "You gave a housing quota to an outsider? Ryan, what do you take me for? Isn't this something important enough to at least discuss with me?" Sure, the housing quota was technically his, but he hadn't said a word to me about it. In my previous life, he had even taken my salary and handed it over to her without a second thought. It was clear to me now. My worth in his eyes wasn't even comparable to a patch of grass. "The housing quota is useless to us right now," Ryan said defensively. "Giving it to Emma isn't a big deal. She's living with her son under her sister-in-law's thumb. Can you really just stand by and watch her suffer? It's just a quota. It's not even yours. Why are you making such a fuss?" I nodded slowly, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. "Fine. You're right. It's not mine. You can give it to whoever you want. It has nothing to do with me." I stood up, unwilling to say another word to him. But Ryan wasn't finished. "We can take our time repaying your father's debts," he said, as though it were a perfectly reasonable suggestion. "Emma, however, can't wait. Give me the money, and I'll send it to her." He reached out his hand as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I went back to my room and retrieved the mooncake tin. Ryan's eyes lit up, thinking I had caved, but when he opened the lid, all he found were receipts and my father's account book. "What is this?" he asked, confused. I motioned for him to take a look. Ryan's face darkened as he flipped through the pages. By the time he reached the end, his expression was grim. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. I pulled out a small notebook where I had meticulously recorded all the money my father had spent on him over the years. Turning to the last page, I pointed to the total. "In these years, my father spent over $2.800 on you," I said flatly. Ryan took a deep breath. "So, what? Are you asking me to repay it now?" I nodded. "If you want to frame it that way, fine. Think what you want. But let me be clear. You will not use this money to help Emma. According to these records, you still owe me over $200. I had thought about forgiving the small remainder, but now I've changed my mind. My father has passed, and I refuse to let people gossip about him being taken advantage of." Ryan looked at me in disbelief. "You're actually calculating everything down to the last penny. I can't believe you do this." I smiled coldly. "Clear accounts make for honest relationships, don't they?" Even Ryan had nothing to say to that. "Luna," he said finally, his voice low, "I didn't expect you to be so calculating. Do you still want to go through with the wedding next month?" He was trying to threaten me. My eyes reddened, but I refused to let the tears fall. Ryan had always been so respectful and obedient in front of my father. After graduating, he had done well for himself at work. 2 years ago, when my father fell critically ill, he had worried about who would take care of me after he was gone. Ryan had promised to marry me and look after me for the rest of my life. At the time, I had never expressed my feelings for him, but his words and his support during those difficult days after my father's death had made me fall for him completely. Now, though, he was threatening me for Emma's sake. I let out a bitter laugh. Did he really think I couldn't live without him? "If you want to call off the wedding, I'm perfectly fine with that," I said evenly. Ryan hadn't expected me to agree so readily. He froze, caught off guard. Before he could respond, I smiled. "But if you're so concerned about Emma, helping her doesn't necessarily mean you have to buy her a house. After all, money isn't the solution right now." Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" I chuckled. "Her sister-in-law targets her because she's seen as a freeloader. If I give her my job, not only will she have a steady income, but she'll also have childcare. Wouldn't that be even better?" Ryan was still trying to process what I had said, his face a mix of confusion and hesitation. "I'm not that kind-hearted," I said calmly. "But you can trade your housing quota for my job." Ryan thought about it for 2 days before reluctantly agreeing. Although Emma couldn't buy a house, she now had a stable job. With that, her troubles at her family's home were essentially resolved, and she seemed genuinely happy. Ryan was pleased too. As for me, the day I received the housing quota, I immediately spent $1.000 to purchase the property. The thought of turning $1.000 into millions in the future thrilled me. Ryan assumed I gave my job to Emma to better prepare for our wedding next month, so he didn't think much of it. What he didn't know was that I had already bought a train ticket to the south and planned to leave tomorrow. When Ryan came home that evening, I had just finished packing my belongings. "Why are you packing so much?" he asked, noticing the bundles. Since I hadn't cooked, Ryan went into the kitchen and made 3 simple dishes and a soup. I stuffed my bags into the cabinet, replying casually, "Too much stuff. Just organizing." Ryan brought me a bowl of soup and, after some hesitation, pulled out a small stack of money from his pocket. "Emma just started her new job. I lent her $50. Here's $30 for you." I paused briefly before accepting the $30 without hesitation. While the larger portion had gone to someone else, this was money he owed my father. Taking it didn't weigh on my conscience. Dinner was quiet and awkward. Neither of us spoke much. Ryan glanced at me and cleared his throat. "Don't worry," he said. "After we're married, you can stay at home and focus on running the household. I'll hand over my wages to you every month. You'll be in charge." As he said this, his ears turned red, and there was a rare hint of expectation in his expression. I let out a small laugh. And what about next month? Won't you need to lend your sister money again? I couldn't resist the jab. Ryan looked at me, puzzled. She has a job now. Why would I still need to lend her money? I couldn't find the words to respond immediately, but it didn't matter. After I left, whether Ryan and Emma ended up together, or he married someone else, none of it would have anything to do with me. Before bed, Ryan brought out a stack of red invitations and asked me who we should invite to the wedding. I glanced at the bright red invitations and lowered my head. It's up to you, I said flatly. Back in my room, I bolted the door. I hadn't packed much, just 2 sets of clothes. I had sewn most of my money and important items into the collars and cuffs of my garments, while the rest was wrapped and hidden in my socks. I'd rather have money that carried an odor than arrive at my destination penniless. I was just about to fall asleep when Ryan unexpectedly knocked on my door. Annoyed, I opened it to find him standing there with a polished wooden box in his hands. "What's this?" I asked, raising an eyebrow in surprise. "Come here," he said, reaching out to pull me forward. I instinctively stepped back. Ryan froze, then withdrew his hand and pushed the box toward me instead. His gaze was cautious, almost expectant. I took the box and opened it under his watchful eyes. Inside was a pair of silver bracelets, 2 gold rings, and a jade bangle. I stared at the items, my emotions complicated. In my previous life, Ryan had never given me these things. I remembered vividly that many years later, after our child had grown up, I found this box in his study. When I opened it out of curiosity, Ryan had immediately snapped the lid shut in front of me, his expression filled with displeasure. "These are things my mother left behind," Ryan explained. "They're meant for the future daughter-in-law of the family. Don't touch them carelessly." In my previous life, the jade bangle among these items had somehow ended up in Emma's hands. Now I realized these things had already been in Ryan's possession all along. What I couldn't figure out was why he was willing to give them to me now, when in the past, even until my death, I had never seen them. I couldn't help but mock myself internally. Was it because I gave my job to Emma? Did he think I still had some use? And that this was his way of thanking me? How laughable. I didn't care for these things in the slightest. "Here, let me put this on you," Ryan said. His face slightly flushed as he picked up the jade bangle. I pulled my hand back. "We're not married yet. It's not appropriate for me to take these." Ryan froze, staring at my indifferent expression, a flicker of unease crossing his face. He had thought I would be overjoyed to see these items, knowing how much significance they held for the family. He never expected me, who used to care so much about him, to now act like I didn't care at all. "Luna, is something bothering you?" he asked cautiously. I looked at him calmly. What could possibly bother me? I just don't care for these things anymore. I turned away. "Take them back," I said flatly, closing the door behind me. Even late into the night, I could still hear the sound of him pacing back and forth outside my door. The next morning, Ryan had already left by the time I got up. I grabbed my bags and boarded the slow green train heading south. The journey took 2 days and 1 night. The train was packed with people. At every stop, local vendors crowded the platform selling snacks, fruits, and other food. I had a window seat, but I couldn't bring myself to splurge on the boxed meals sold on the train. Instead, I opted for simple steamed buns and peanuts from the villagers outside. Aside from occasional bathroom trips, I barely left my seat. By the time I finally got off at the bus station in North City, I discovered that my bag and the pockets of my clothes had been slashed open. Fortunately, the pockets only contained a few small bills meant as a decoy, so the loss was minimal. However, being in an unfamiliar place, I nearly got dragged into shady motels near the train station by overly aggressive touts. I silently shook them off, clutching my bag tightly, and eventually found a seat in a hospital corridor to rest. The next day, following the directions of a hospital security guard, I rented a small room in a nearby residential house. My first job was working as a shop assistant at a wholesale market. Starting from knowing nothing, I quickly learned how to assist the big buyers who came to pick up goods. In just 2 months, I became adept at handling inventory and fulfilling orders. Over time, I noticed that while there were many stores in the market selling clothes, shoes, and socks, the competition was fierce. Popular items often sold out quickly, And if a shop didn't have enough stock, customers would simply go elsewhere. On the other hand, if they overstocked and the items didn't sell, the unsold inventory would pile up, becoming a financial burden. My boss frequently faced such issues. On the surface, the business seemed to involve large transactions, moving lots of goods and making big profits. But in reality, the surplus inventory often outweighed the earnings. By the end of the year, it wasn't uncommon for them to make little to no profit while being stuck with unsellable items. After observing this pattern in many nearby shops, I began to formulate a plan. I carefully calculated my initial $2,500 and the wages I had earned over the past year. Finally, I approached my boss with a proposal. After some negotiation, I bought a large batch of surplus inventory at a deeply discounted price. By this time, South City and the coastal areas were beginning to develop rapidly, and trendy, fashionable clothing was becoming very popular. In contrast, the inland areas like ours were lagging behind due to the long distances and underdeveloped logistics networks. Fashionable, trendy clothes were still incredibly rare. If I could bring these items back ahead of others, they would undoubtedly sell well. However, getting the clothes was one thing. Transporting them back home was another challenge entirely. I visited several shipping companies at the wholesale market, but none had routes to my city. Refusing to give up, I spent several more days searching and finally found a company willing to deliver to my town. After a lot of negotiating and an additional payment of over $300, they agreed to extend their route by an extra hour to deliver the goods. Once I sent everything off through logistics, I packed up my belongings and started my journey back home. This time, the trip was even more crowded. As it was close to the end of the year, the train was packed with people returning home, far more than during my previous trip. Yet, unlike before, I felt no anxiety, even when an older woman tried to fight me from my seat, or when someone cut the strap of my small bag and stole it without me noticing. I remained unfazed. Finally arriving at the station, I rented a ground floor room on a busy street in our city. 4 days later, I hired a tricycle to retrieve my goods, and soon after, I set up a street stall in high-traffic areas. Over the past year working in sales in North City, I had gained a good understanding of different types of customers, who had money, who was picky, and who loved to bargain. Wealthy customers got recommendations for high-quality, well-tailored clothing. For the picky ones, I let them try on as many pieces as they wanted without a hint of impatience. For the bargain hunters, I prepared extras like socks and gloves to offer as free gifts for bulk purchases. This often encouraged them to buy even more. As the year drew to a close, more and more people were buying clothes, and my trendy styles became increasingly popular. Even shopkeepers from nearby stores came over to secretly observe my inventory. Soon, I had sold every piece of clothing I brought back, as well as scarves, socks, and hair accessories. By the time I finished selling, I had earned nearly $10,000, almost becoming a 10,000-aire. After the new year, I didn't rush to restock clothes. The post-holiday season was typically a slow time for fashion sales, and bringing in new inventory now would likely result in unsold stock piling up. Instead, with the money I had made, I purchased 5 more properties in the same residential complex as my earlier investment. With the remaining funds, I headed back to South City and started selling electrical appliances. Knowing that weddings in our area were beginning to embrace the trend of 3 essentials and 1 luxury, a bicycle, sewing machine, watch, and radio, I focused on those items. Radios, in particular, were so popular that finding one sometimes required sheer luck or timing. Over the next 6 months, I worked tirelessly, and by the end of August, I secured a significant commission from a large order. Combining that with my previous earnings and savings, I invested everything into a shipment of radios and related items. When the goods arrived, they sold even better than the clothes from the previous year. I didn't deal in major brands, but the profit margin for each radio was close to $1,000. With additional items like cassette tapes, radios became my best-selling products. As the saying goes, gold in September, silver October. These 2 months brought in record profits. Later, I made another trip, capitalizing on the rush of people eager to buy gifts for newlyweds or to celebrate the new year. That wave brought in another round of significant earnings. Even during the Lunar New Year, my business thrived. By this point, I had established strong relationships with suppliers and logistics companies in South City. Running out of stock no longer required me to travel in person. I could simply make a phone call, wire the payment, and have the goods delivered to me within days. With the scale of my business growing, operating as a small-time street vendor was no longer viable. I rented a spacious, triple-unit storefront in the busiest commercial district. In addition to the storefront, I also rented a large ground floor space for wholesale operations. Wholesale didn't bring in as much profit per item as retail, but the sheer volume of transactions more than made up for it. As demand grew, I hired 3 additional salespeople to help manage the workload, while I focused on expanding the business even further. One can't get by without some knowledge, right, Ryan? We're getting married. Forget about a wedding banquet. But are you really unwilling to even buy me a sewing machine? The familiar voice made me instinctively glance toward the store entrance. There, Emma was holding back tears, clutching her son's hand as she confronted Ryan. 2 years had passed, and Ryan seemed different. Once distant and composed, like an untouchable figure, he now appeared haggard, his face pale and darkened with exhaustion. If I wasn't mistaken, there were even streaks of gray in his hair. Sensing my gaze, Ryan instinctively turned to look at me. The moment our eyes met, he froze. "Luna," he murmured, his voice barely audible. Emma frowned and followed his line of sight. When she saw me, her expression shifted briefly, and she averted her eyes. Then, as if emboldened by some thought, she raised her head and puffed out her chest. "Oh, isn't this Luna? Are you working here now?" One of my employees was about to respond but stopped when they saw my expression. Emma, recovering her composure, withdrew her anger and forced a smile. She grabbed Ryan's stiff arm and walked over to me. She adjusted her hair casually. "It's been a while, Luna." I smiled faintly. "Out shopping?" Ryan's eyes reddened as his mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Emma shot him a sharp glare before addressing me with a smile. "Oh, Luna, you probably don't know, but Ryan and I are already married." I nodded slightly. "Congratulations. Shopping for wedding essentials." "I see." Emma gave a modest nod and then dragged me along to browse the store. Under my polite compliments and admiring gaze, she eventually bought a radio, a sewing machine, and a color TV. The color TV was one of the newest and most expensive items in my store. To commemorate this special reunion, I decided to charge an extra $1,000 for it. After paying, Ryan's face visibly darkened, but Emma couldn't help smiling as they prepared to leave. She turned to me and said, "Thanks for all your help today, Luna. Working here must be exhausting, but I hear you earn commission. With everything we bought today, your commission must be quite the windfall." I held back a laugh. "You're absolutely right. Thanks so much for your support." As Emma basked in her triumph, a stout middle-aged man hurried into the store. "Boss, has my color TV arrived?" he asked, addressing me directly. Emma's smile froze as she looked at me in disbelief. I simply smiled back and gestured for the man to follow me. "Mr. Lee, I've been holding it just for you. Come with me." When I returned from the warehouse, Emma and Ryan were already gone. That evening, after balancing the books with my employees and locking up the store, I stepped out into the night. I hadn't walked far when I noticed someone following me. Just as I reached for the pepper spray in my bag, a familiar voice called out, "Luna, it's me." It was Ryan. Nearby, at a roadside food stall, Ryan ordered 2 bowls of stir-fried noodles. The clinking of glasses and the sound of the chef's wok sizzling with heat filled the air, bringing a comforting sense of normalcy. The 2 of us sat there in silence. In my world, Ryan had been gone from my life for 2 years. During that time, I could count on one hand the number of times I'd thought about him. My days were consumed with plans for making money, buying properties, and building a future. If he hadn't shown up today, I might have completely forgotten what he looked like. As the awkward silence stretched on, my hunger got the better of me. Picking up my chopsticks, I started eating. Ryan watched me with a complicated expression before finally speaking. "Luna, how have you been these past few years?" I nodded quickly. "Very well." It was the truth. Especially after leaving Ryan, My life had been better than ever. He stared at me closely, his face clouded with emotion. Luna, I'm sorry. I paused mid-bite, genuinely surprised. Ryan actually realized he owed me an apology? His face turned pale as he continued. I know you left without a word because you were deeply disappointed in me. We were engaged, but I didn't cut ties with Emma. Instead, I went out of my way to care for her. He lowered his gaze. But I never expected her to tell others that she already belonged to me. I couldn't help but laugh. From sister to lover. What a promotion. You were never actually related. Yet you kept calling her your sister, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. No wonder she felt justified in saying that. Ryan's face twisted in frustration. But he kept talking. Her family caused an uproar. They demanded that I marry her. But she's a woman with a child. How could my mother ever agree? They even caused scenes at my workplace and my mother's job. Enough. Enough. I raised my hand to stop him. I really have no interest in hearing about this mess. Setting my chopsticks down, I added, You're married now. Telling me all this is inappropriate. Enjoy your meal. I'll leave first. I pulled out a $100 bill, handed it to the vendor, and left without looking back. We all lived in the same area, so I was well aware of what Emma's family was like. They were worse than vampires, sucking the life out of everything. When Emma got married, her family accepted a hefty bride price but didn't even send a blanket as part of her dowry. Naturally, her in-laws looked down on her, and her married life quickly descended into chaos. That's why she ended up back at her parents' house. Ryan had known all this but had been blinded by his feelings for her, seeing everything she did through rose-colored glasses. Now, with her family leeching off him, he finally understood what it meant to be trapped. But it was too late. After that, Ryan came to see me a few more times. Each time, he hesitated and seemed on the verge of saying something but never did. It was exhausting and frustrating. In the end, I had enough. I decided to invite Emma over and made Ryan wait nearby. Facing Ryan directly, I asked, What exactly do you want from me? Ryan seemed to struggle with himself for a long moment before finally looking up at me, his face full of determination. Luna, he said, his voice faltering. I want to say that Do you think we still have a chance? Ryan asked, his voice trembling. I sneered, my tone sharp and unapologetic. You're married. Are you seriously trying to string me along now? It wasn't my choice, he blurted. I was set up. I can divorce her. Ryan shot to his feet, his agitation clear. She's just a divorced woman with a child. If she hadn't clung to me, do you think I'd ever have married her? Ever since I've been with her, people have been mocking me, saying I'm playing stepdad for cheap. They say I threw away a watermelon to pick up a pair of discarded shoes no one wanted. Before Ryan could finish, there was a sharp yell. A figure burst into the room. I'll kill you, you shameless bastard. Emma shrieked, lunging at him. What's wrong with me having a child? Is he eating your food or taking your name? Calling me discarded shoes? What does that make you? Some moldy cucumber no one wants? And don't act so self-righteous. If I'd known you couldn't even last 3 seconds, I'd have died before marrying you. The room devolved into chaos as Emma's voice rang out, accompanied by the sounds of scuffling and shouting. Meanwhile, I calmly put on my sunglasses and walked away. Life is long, and perhaps their pain was only just beginning. But as for me, I was grateful. I had escaped long ago.